Good evening. We are live, Realtors Nation. Welcome, welcome. The moment you've been waiting for. We apologize for the tardiness, but guess what? We are here in direct effect, coming to you. Good evening. I'm Rob Pasker, anchor for NAREB's Realtors Nation TV. NAREB is an acronym for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the oldest and largest African-American real estate trade association in the country, comprised of over 90 local chapters across 35 states. With Realtors Nation TV, we are excited to have the opportunity to provide unique programming that will highlight and celebrate relevant information, policies, and real-life stories surrounding Black homeownership in the United States. Tonight's episode is our inaugural episode, and we thought it only fitting to introduce you to the visionary behind this revolutionary idea, the current president of NAREB, Donnell Williams, who will now bring a message to you, our viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our 31st president for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Mr. Donnell Williams.
On behalf of my leadership team, board of directors, partners, sponsors, and of course, our amazing members who are referred to as Realtors. Welcome to Realtors Nation TV, a platform that strives to educate and mobilize as well as entertain. The NAREB was founded in 1947 on a hot, steamy night in Tampa, Florida by 12 visionary pioneers, one courageous woman and 11 powerful men who decided that enough was enough. As was common at that time, African-American real estate professionals were not permitted membership into the National Association of Realtors simply because they were Black. But our resilient and determined founders did not settle for being shut out of the real estate industry. Instead, they used that closed window to open the door of opportunity for themselves and their peers by forming a real estate trade association that would not only welcome Black members of all industry disciplines, but an organization that would advocate for Black buyers and sellers across the country. We are 73 years strong and vigilant in our fight for democracy and housing for all. We are the guardians of our communities and are on a mission to educate, empower, and mobilize our members, our clients, and now you, our viewers. Thank you so very much for joining us for this first episode and the episodes that follow. As I was speaking some time ago to my chair of Housed in the Car, we decided that Super Series Tuesday, launched on the Housed in the Car platform, needs to become broader. So after much collaboration and discussion, we came up with Realtors Nation TV to highlight the NAREB, the Realtors 8, to not only Realtors, but non-Realtors as well. I felt the community at large needs to know the good work the Realtors organization does. These are extraordinary times that call for extraordinary measures, and we answer the call. I encourage you to like, subscribe, and share Realtors Nation TV with your friends and family. Please use the hashtag Realtors Nation. Thank you. Stay safe, stay woke, and have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, all right. Hey, thank you, Mr. President Williams. Whew. Now it's time to bring the fire, a segment where we will discuss a smoking hot real estate story from across the country. And today's Bring the Fire story is one that was published by CNN's journalist Chauncey Alcorn, entitled 5 Things Corporate America Can Do Besides Tweeting to Combat Racism. Wow, Chauncey really put America in the hot seat with that title. Here is a rundown of his list of 5. Offer relief funds to Black-owned businesses. 2, increase Black homeownership. 3, support unions. 4, increase pay for essential workers. And 5, hire and promote Black executives. Now, did you notice list item number 2, increase Black homeownership? Citizens across the nation are now standing up to fight against the injustices that have been inflicted upon Blacks for over 300 years, and most recently with the murder of George Floyd. If you pay attention to the protests, you will notice that the fight is not just for lives. Yes, Black lives matter, but that's not all. Black education matters, Black wealth matters, Black businesses matter, and Black homeownership matters. In his article, Mr. Alcorn encouraged corporations to donate to NAREB, our organization, whose members successfully completed over 20,000 home purchase transactions with Black homeowners in 2019. Kudos to y'all. President Williams was quoted as saying, corporations who want to end systemic racism should consider contributing to NAREB's Housed in the Car program, which targets Black millennials whose economic struggles and consumer behavior changes have fueled a record decline in Black homeownership. Mr. Williams also shared that there are 1.7 million Black millennials in the U.S. earning more than $100,000 per year who do not own homes. Imagine that, almost 2 million Black millennials making a 6-digit income in the U.S. do not own their homes. Alarming, right? RealtistNation TV, what items would you add to this list? What do you think corporate America should do to combat racism? Let's talk about it. Send your list items to RealtistNation TV at nareb.com. All right. Yes, we're going to move on to the next segment, y'all. Up next is the Realtist Nation Spotlight. The Realtist Nation Spotlight is a segment where we will offer one of our NAREB's amazing Realtist members 73 seconds to introduce themselves, share their business, and expound on how being a Realtist has changed their life. Why 73 seconds? Well, that's because NAREB has been in existence for 73 years. Our featured Realtist for this episode is none other than Sharon Henry. Sharon is a broker and the owner of Exit Realty Quality Solutions, which has 2 locations in Marietta and Lawrenceville, Georgia. She's also the National Convention Chair for NAREB and the Regional Vice President for NAREB's Region 6, which includes Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. Madam Henry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I'm so excited to be here. As you said, I've been a part of NAREB for 15 years, and I have served on every level and every capacity that you can think of. Locally, I was just the president for the Empire Board of Realtors here in Atlanta, Georgia. And now I serve as the regional vice president for Region 6, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. And Rob, you might not have known, but I now currently serve as the National Convention Chair as well. And being a part of NAREB has definitely set me apart from just being a regular real estate agent. Being a part of NAREB has taught me how to be a community advocate and has taught me how to fight for democracy and housing in our community to increase Black home ownership. So Rob, thank you so much for the opportunity. And thank you, President Williams, for spotlighting me tonight. And if you're not a part of NAREB, shame on you, because we have 90 chapters across the country and you need to get in touch with us and join one of them. Thank you, Rob.
Hey, thank you so very much, Madam Henry. And you are right. You know, NAREB has changed my life and it's helped me change a lot of people's lives for that matter. But as you can see, we have some very powerful Realtors members, and the only member that NAREB is missing is you. Yes, you. But I'll address how you can join us later in the show. So, Realtors Nation, we're about to move into our main segment featuring Housed in the Car. But before we do that, let's take a short break.
House in the car. House in the car.
The house in the car.
Did you know that the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREB, has been around since 1947, working hard in the background, fighting the good fight ever evolving to ensure democracy and housing for all African Americans. And why would we stop now when there's still so much work to be done? According to the Urban Institute, only 37% of 25 to 34-year-olds owned homes in 2015. Due to financial challenges, student loans, credit card debt, and the inability to save for a down payment, we can help. NAREB is standing in the gap. That's why we must help you understand the importance of the house, then the car. 1.7 million millennials have purchasing power, but have chosen not to purchase.
No more.
Let's compare. A car depreciates. A house appreciates into cash. It is time. Go to the website, fill out an online fillable budget, contact one of our ambassadors. We are here to help you with tools and resources to point you in the right direction. You have nothing to fear but fear itself. Start your process to your new home. The house, then the car. TheHouseThenTheCar.com.
House, then the car. House, then the car. House, then the car. House, then the car. House.
My name is Donnell Williams. I am president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and I approve this message.
Welcome back, NAREB RealtistNation TV. If you are just now joining us, you came in at a good time. We're about to go into our main segment, and it's going to be one that is thought-provoking and inspiring, as well as informative. First, let me provide a brief backdrop before we move forward. President Donnell Williams was installed as the 31st president of NAREB in August of 2019. He came into office armed with a plan and strategy that included 8 initiatives that were quickly dubbed as the NAREB 8. NAREB 8 expands the reach of the 2M in 5 program, which stands for 2 million new Black homeowners in 5 years. Launched in 2015, these 8 initiatives are the ammunition needed to arm members and supporters, the Realtors Nation, if you will, in the war against the decline of Black homeownership in America, and to claim victory in a deliberate, strategic, comprehensive manner. Today's main segment features one of NAREB 8's initiatives called House, Then the Car. House, Then the Car, or HTTC, focuses on communities that have large numbers of millennials and Gen Xers who do not own homes. House, Then the Car was designed to assist and encourage these critical target audiences to prepare for homeownership, real estate investment, as well as wealth building strategies before purchasing luxury cars and or high ticket items that do not appreciate in value. Hence the name House, Then the Car. The title of today's segment is Homeownership from a Sociological Perspective. Industry professionals often conduct research and are well versed on the economical, environmental, and financial benefits and barriers related to homeownership, but rarely the sociological. Let's join our House, Then the Car chairwoman, Letitia Grant, as she interviews our expert guest, Dr. Ashley S. Atkins. And it's coming. Or no. I hope you all are doing well out there, Realtors Nation. I'm very excited to be here, to have a platform. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have the platform to disseminate information from the national organization. They're doing wonderful things to increase Black homeownership and also increase the businesses of our membership. So this is it's definitely an honor to be here. Bear with it. This is our first one, and I'm telling you now, it's only going to get better as we continue moving forward with Realtors Nation TV. Hope you all are being safe out here. Coronavirus is real. Hopefully, your industry is protected during these times. I know some industries, some states have had the real estate industry shut down during this time, but whatever the case, make sure you're taking the precautions in regards to coronavirus to protect yourselves and your families as you continue to build your businesses out here, because it is real and it is affecting a lot of people. So take advantage of the time as well. The market that we're seeing nationally, inventory is very low. Nationally, we don't have enough inventory and foot traffic is high. I know it's high here in Toledo, Ohio, Northwest Ohio, and moving forward, I know nationally. So take advantage of the market that we're in, get some listings.
Good evening, President Pasker, Anchor Pasker.
Good evening,
How are
madam.
you? I was asked to jump on
I'm living the
just
dream.
so that, yeah, living the dream. So tell us a little bit about yourself in the chapter that you lead.
Yes, so I am the president of the Greater Toledo Realtist Association. We are one of the newest chapters of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. We were chartered at the 2019 National Convention in Atlantic City. And, you know, starting a chapter is different from joining a chapter that's already been in existence, because it's a different challenge in getting buy-in from the people in the community and also from other organizations. So, but I can tell you Toledo has been very good to me, and I get a lot of support here. And so I'm very excited for the programming that we are implementing here, specifically working with the civic organizations in order to reach their membership, to educate them on the benefits of homeownership, as well as working with these organizations to invest in real estate, because organizations need to create equity and residual income as well. So there's a lot of opportunity here in Northwest Ohio, specifically based off the last U.S. Census. Only 30% of Black households own their properties, while 70% of white households own their properties. So there's a very large homeownership gap, which equates to a wealth gap, which equates to a health gap, education gap, in totality. So I truly believe that we are doing God's work by financially arming our people to go out here and solidify their financial foundations for themselves and their futures.
That's really rich, because as we found by the last numbers from the U.S. Census, nationally, Black people own 44% of Black people own their homes. So Toledo has lower home ownership rates than the national numbers. Wow. So you face a lot of challenges. Kudos to you for being a millennial and taking the charge and jumping in and deciding not to just be a leader, but to be an innovator by starting your own chapter and becoming president. That is so wonderful. And thank you. As a seasoned member of the Realtors Nation of NAREB, I personally want to thank you for what you're doing in my home state of Ohio. I'm in the Atlanta area now, but I guess you could say that I'm a Buckeye peach.
We'll take it. We'll take it as long as you put that Buckeye first. You put the Buckeye first. That's all that matters.
I'll probably get in trouble for that, but yes. But so have you been able to implement a committee or any ambassadors or to participate in any of the House in the Car activities that have happened across the country?
I will tell you what, yes, the Toledo chapter was one of, in the inaugural event, the first rollout of House in the Car last fall. We had an event here in Toledo where we brought different professionals and different disciplines of real estate to come to the people and educate them on not only the debt to income ratio and savings and budgeting strategies, but also real estate investment strategies and preparing for home ownership. So yes, it's something that we partook in last fall. And I know if Realtors Nation missed out, I know I kind of missed out because I was preparing for this, but House in the Car had an ambassador training today. So if you didn't catch it, be on the lookout, because I'm sure there will be more in the future. So stay tuned for that.
There absolutely will. We have a lot of things coming up, especially, well, we're still in planning stages for some things because COVID has really made us kind of pivot on our heel. But nonetheless, we're not going to stop the good work. of House in the Car and of all of President Williams' 8 initiatives. So, we're really excited about how this initiative is taking off. And again, we appreciate your work. By the way, I'm Jill Harrison. I'm the communications lead for NAREB National. Thank you for everybody joining us this evening. If you're on this, if you're watching this Realtors Nation TV show, then you are now a part of Realtors Nation. Once you join us, then you are in. And now I think we're going to move forward with the segment with Dr. Atkins and Madam Chair Letitia Grant for House in the Car.
Indeed. We'll work it out here.
Okay.
All right. Almost.
We'll get there. I would encourage everybody to please go to Realtors NAREB and House in the Car on all social media platforms. Like, share, and follow us. And please join us next Tuesday and every Tuesday at 6 p.m. for Realtors Nation TV. Are we ready? And please send your questions and comments to NAREB@NAREB.com or to RealtistNationTV@NAREB.com.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Super Series Tuesday. My name is Letitia Grant. I am the National Chair of House in the Car, and I'd like to welcome you to Super Series Tuesday, where today, episode 2, we will discuss home ownership, a sociological perspective. I am excited about our topic, but I am even more excited about our special guest. And our special guest is Ms. Ashley S. Atkins, MBA, who is a business consultant and a sociology PhD candidate at Texas A&M University. Her research interests are racial and ethnic relations, organizational theory, African American entrepreneurship, sociology of entrepreneurship, and economic sociology. In addition, Ashley serves as a sociology
So let's pray on that. And I am a sociology instructor at Prairie A&M University, and I'm just happy to be here. I am a part of this amazing organization, so I'm happy to offer my my take with my education and my background on this really important topic of home ownership.
Yes, and I really thank you for that. We often just explore home ownership and how to get an individual from the thought of home ownership up to owning a home, but there are a few components that we've missed, and understanding it from a sociological perspective is probably one of those key factors that's going to bridge that gap between getting a person interested to getting them closed. So you tell us, why is this conversation important?
So there's one thing I think that a lot of people don't realize is because oftentimes literature happens in an academic space, it kind of like stays there. So you have a lot of scholars and academics who are writing these amazing articles in these amazing journals, and they're doing all this research, but it never goes anywhere outside of academia. It never gets to the people that really, need it. Mm-hmm. But with conversations like this, I'm able to not only share my research, but also the research that has laid the foundation for my research. And so when we think about these experiences of home buyers, you hear all these stories about, you know, discrimination and racism and all of these things. But one thing that I don't think that people realize is that when home ownership equals access. So it's not just, you know, access to a home, but it's access to good schools, it's access to safer neighborhoods, it's access to, in some cases, food, access, you know, grocery stores, all of these things that kind of like trickle down, equates to health. And so where somebody lives is really, really important for beyond just their home, but their whole entire life. And so when we think about home ownership from an economics perspective, people assume that the real estate industry is, you know, race neutral, like race and gender neutral, like race doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter, you're just buying a home, none of those things are important, right? It doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what race you are. And so like this race and gender neutral you know, assumption or belief is false, because we hear these stories from people who have faced discrimination and who have higher interest rates, you know, than other groups. But when we take this this information and we look at it from other disciplines, specifically sociology, we're able to identify, you know, the discrimination and racism that occurs from real estate agents. We're able to talk about living discrimination. We're able to talk about, you know, racial steering that occurs in the real estate industry. But fortunately, what's really important to me is not only talking about the barriers, because we are aware, whether we're aware of them on an individual level, like our own personal stories, or an academic level. What's important to me is moving beyond the barriers to the strategies that that home buyers can use to become homeowners. So what are some of the strategies that they can call on, they can pull out when they are faced with, you know, living discrimination, or when they have a fear of going and looking at a house in a predominantly, you know, white neighborhood and they won't get treated the same? What are some things they can do to, you know, navigate and avoid a lot of these barriers that oftentimes prevent people from even starting the home ownership process?
Right. And that's really deep and heavy, because we live in a world that we like to believe that, you know, discrimination doesn't occur anymore. But there are so many different layers and levels to discrimination. So why is it, based upon your research, why is it that you believe that it still occurs in today's society?
And I think it's because there is often an assumption that's made with people with privilege. So you have this group of people with privilege, whether it's white privilege, whether it's gender male privilege, whether it's class privilege. And so it's really important to realize that just because you are a minority, or just because you are Black African American, doesn't mean you don't have privilege, because you could be a man, you could be somebody of middle or upper class, and your experience in the home buying process is not going to be the same. And so you oftentimes hear people with class, gender, and race privilege saying that, you know, race and class and gender don't matter because I've never dealt with discrimination. Yeah, because you are a middle upper class person. I've never dealt with, you know, discrimination on my gender. Yeah, because you're a man. And so what we have to do is make sure that we draw attention to the people that don't get equal opportunity, don't get equal access when it comes to this home buying process. The people that go to the bank and they, you know, get a higher interest rate than somebody else who's of a different race than them, and making sure that they realize it's not just them. It's not just you, this one person that's getting this higher interest rate. There's data and research out there that covers hundreds and thousands of people who are minority who receive higher interest rate when all things are equal. When we look at everybody's creditworthiness, education, income, all things equal, people who are minority are still receiving higher interest rates than other people. And so what we have to do is we have to move away from that assumption that that this process of home ownership is gender and race neutral, because it's just simply not.
Right.
And so to point out again, scholars talk about the home buying discrimination when it comes to lending discrimination. So what we see is that 82% of home buyers are declined mortgage loans, even despite creditworthy. Means again, even though you have the credit to get the mortgage loan, you don't receive it, you're denied. And then the ones that do receive the mortgage loan that are accepted, that, you know, successfully are accepted, they receive 0.5% higher interest rate than other people. And so when we really just zoom in, we notice that the discrimination is not only based on race, but it's also based on education. It's also based on gender. And so there is a scholar that recently found out that Black applicants who have no college education are either denied at a higher rate when it comes to mortgage loans, or they receive a higher interest rate. And so what this means is that you're leaving people out of the home buying process simply because they don't have an education.
Right.
Not because they don't have the money, not because they don't have, whatever you need to, to own a home, not because they don't have what is required, simply because they don't have a college education. And when we follow what it is, that's just simply not fair. But then when we look at the data, on a larger scale, and what this means when you say people who don't have college education are declined or have higher interest rate, it leads to financial issues. It makes them very vulnerable to financial instability in the long run. And then also, again, it talks about access to schools for the children, access to quality food, access to safe environments. And then when we zoom in even further, we look at Black women. Black women are the most vulnerable out of all the groups when it comes to race, age, and gender, because again, you're a double minority. Not only are you Black, but then you're also a woman. And we top that off with younger women who are trying to, begin this home buying process. They're also experiencing discrimination, and they become, again, more vulnerable to this process. And we think about just knowing this information, it will make you just fearful to even begin the process. You may want to buy a home, but then when you're knowledgeable about this, you're just like, well, maybe I shouldn't. If they're going to discriminate against me because I'm Black, let me not go get the bank loan.
Right.
They're going to, treat me like I'm not knowledgeable when I go and talk to the real estate agent. Maybe let me just not even do this whole process. And so you don't even begin because you're afraid. Just simply put, you're just afraid because you know that there's so many hurdles and barriers to jump over, and it's just an exhausting. Home buying process is already a long process, and it becomes more exhausting when there's just unnecessary barriers that are put into place just because of how you identify.
So in speaking of that, the layers, and I'd like to kind of tell you a little bit about a situation that I was involved with. I had a client, and we even think about source of income because she was employed. However, she had a secondary source of income, which just so happened to be from the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Because she had a portion of her mortgage payment was going to come from, or was an additional income source because they had to use it as income, was going to come from a third party, which in this case was Housing Choice Voucher. There was an additional layer added to her approval.
Wow.
And talk about how discouraging that was, because now we're saying, well, you're getting this portion of payment, which of course is from the government. We're going to receive it. It's not, we can talk about contingencies all day long. You're not guaranteed to have a job tomorrow. So they tried to blame it on that. But when they told her she had to bring $1,000 of her own funds to closing, when that wasn't a layer that was added to any other loan.
Wow. And so what do you do in those situations? Like, how do you advise, what type of advice do you give to your clients when they have to deal with this? And it's, as an experienced realtor, that this is not the norm.
Well, in this particular case, this was just one bank. So we switched to another bank, and then we turned around and we reported that information to an attorney. And I actually, not with this particular bank, but I had another situation where I had two clients. They actually sued a bank, and they both were awarded $50,000 because it was true discrimination. Yeah. You have to, some of these things you have to take a step further, because you see it and you know that this is not a layer that's associated with that particular program. And then even when you talk about education, when you say, okay, well, you're declined at a higher rate because you've not received a college education, that's like a double-edged sword. The college education typically comes with a student loan. If you obtain a student loan, you don't qualify for the loan. You apply for the loan, you're declined because you've not gotten an education. You're just hit from both sides.
Exactly. And so that's what I mean when I say, like, the process it can become exhausting. It can become exhausting to the point where you just give up and you just say, okay, I'll just rent. I'll just keep renting, these apartments. I'll just keep renting a home from someone else, because and you've experienced what it takes, or you've heard stories like, yourself, you've heard stories of people who have gone through these exhausting processes. And you just, it deters you from a really important process of home ownership.
Yeah. Now, in your research, one of the things that you sent to me was coded language.
Yes.
And I definitely like to talk to our Realtist audience about coded language. And I'll share with you this. So African Americans, of course, as you know, and not always had the opportunity to be a part of Realtors, hence where Realtist comes from. So right, but in with that, in knowing, so of course we're not second nature to discrimination. We know, we've seen it, we've lived it, unfortunately. And now here we are with NAREB, NAREB, and our Realtist Nation. So shout out to our Realtist Nation. Thank you guys for giving us this platform to discuss home ownership from a sociological platform, because this is extremely important. So let's talk about it. What in the world is coded language?
And so, so coded language, it kind of touches on a couple points. So this comes from a study. I'm trying to pull it up here. But to begin with, when we think about just the current climate of racism and discrimination in the US, right? So we may not see, and this comes from a scholar named Bonilla Silva, we may not see really overt discrimination or just, overt racism where somebody's just calling you, a racial slur, or somebody is, doing more like overt direct things. But now it's a little bit more subtle, right? So in Bonilla Silva's work, he says it's colorblind racism, where it becomes a little bit harder to pin, like it feels racist. I really can't pinpoint why it feels racist, but this kind of feels racist, right? And so along those same lines, Kroger Glenn is a sociologist, and she actually did some work with Rice University, with Rice University. And so she finds out that she studied a bunch of realtors in Houston, 3 areas in Houston. So we think about Fifth Ward, the Heights, and then North Side. And just a vast number of realtors, and she's examining them, following them, and she's performing not only quantitative research, but also qualitative. Qualitative is where we capture, really in-depth conversation from participants. And she finds that they're using language that is legal, but it's unethical, right? So I can't sue because you didn't say that this neighborhood is a Black neighborhood and it's poor and it's broke down and it's X, Y, and Z and all these, stereotypes and stigmas that we often associate with Black neighborhoods. But you'll find a way to kind of like, just slowly and kind of slickly and like really, just kind of like subtly say what you're trying to say without saying it. So she
less desirable is something I've heard.
Exactly. Yes, right. So less desirable. And so she gives an example of somebody, asking if the neighborhood is Black. And so she says, oh, people always ask me if this neighborhood is Black. Is this neighborhood Black? So she kind of like really let the client know that not only are they asking, many people have asked if this neighborhood is Black, right? So if I tell you that a lot of people are asking if this neighborhood is Black, it's probably a Black neighborhood, right? And then she goes on to say, well, I tell them, okay, I can't tell you if this neighborhood is Black or not, but just look around, just look around at the quote that she gives is the tires and then the tamales, all under one roof. And so she's saying like, so it's a way to like use certain, like racialize certain things that really shouldn't be racialized, like food and objects, in order to connect it to a specific race. And so she goes on to give examples like this throughout her article of realtors just simply saying, just like using really coded language. And the reason why they say they do it, racially coding a client. So if I'm white and I know my client's white and I know my client doesn't want to live in a Black neighborhood, I can use racial codes or coded language to let them know that this is a Black neighborhood. Oh, well, it's not as at night. There is a lot of violence, or I've heard that there's a lot of violence in this neighborhood. It's a really diverse neighborhood. They're looking for a neighborhood that is specifically more white, calling a neighborhood more a really diverse neighborhood,
absolutely,
multicultural neighborhood. Right? And again, it's just simply to build trust. It's just to build trust with the client and saying, we're like each other. We're alike. I want to make sure that you get the best house in the best neighborhood, and the best neighborhood isn't a Black neighborhood. And I want to let you know that I'm on board with you. But what's sad is that she finds that I think somewhere between 81% of agents use coded language. That was what she found in her study. But what's also sad is that it's not just white agents, right?
That's right.
So it's also Black agents, agents who are doing the same thing to build trust with their clients. If I'm a Black agent and I have a Black client who doesn't want to live in a neighborhood with Latinx people, I can use coded language again, like, oh, well, you know, this is a Spanish-speaking neighborhood. They speak a lot of Spanish in this neighborhood. I can just, you know, really call on a lot of the stereotypes and stigmas that are out there to subtly let you know what I'm trying to let you know in a legal way, even though it's really unethical.
Right. Dang, and you said 82% or 81%? That's an extremely high number.
Yeah, so 81% of white agents use coded language. It's a very, very high number. And this is in Houston. So this is the Heights, this is North Side, this is Fifth Ward. Houston, 81% of white agents are using, in her study, the ones that she observed, are using this language. But it was over 40% of non-white agents were using it as well. So 41% of non-white includes Black, Latinx, Asian, you know, Indigenous, all these other groups. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting because you said to build trust. So I've had clients that have relocated to Houston, and typically it's my African American clients that are relocated, and they'll ask me a couple things like, how far am I from a barbershop and barbecue? I want to be by my people, and it takes me aback because it's like, how do you actually answer that question? Because you kind of know, I mean, it's easy to go one way or the other. And if you put yourself in the wrong, in a bad position, it's going to be hard for you to dig your way out of that one. So you have to be very, very careful how you answer it. But what I like to tell my agent is always provide a client with facts. And maybe you don't necessarily have to answer that question. So we were provided, if we have joined the Realtors board, there was a program, it's a REI source. And what it allowed us to do is take a search area and tell the client everything that's in that area.
Good.
So now it removed me from having to answer that question. But it's really hard. Sometimes it's almost like, you know, we're being backed into a corner, and what do you do? Because you do want that client, but I'm still surprised to hear that 81%, because that's an extremely high number.
Yeah, and so, I mean, there's so many things to do to avoid it, but I'm glad that you are finding ways to still be, you know, still address their concern if they want to know how close they are to a barbershop and barbecue. Here is a resource. Here's a guide of local, local businesses in the area. And it's a way to stay ethical without, you know, really playing on their, playing on whatever type of ploy they're trying to, you know, put out there. There's ways to avoid it and be ethical.
Yeah. So we've talked about quite a few things that I'm going to call it awareness, and I'm not going to call it discouraging, because at the end of the day, we live in this world, and what we have to do as a group is we just have to learn how to maneuver our way through it and find a way to achieve those things that we're looking for. So what advice do you have to give to our audience to assist in avoiding these barriers, these traps, what advice do you have for them?
So to your point, spot on. Like, you know, we don't want to discourage people from the home buying process with this information, because again, it can be discouraging to know that all this is occurring. But what we need them to do, and what I do in my current research when I'm studying entrepreneurs, is I talk about strategy construction processes. So what can you do? What strategies can you do to avoid barriers, right? And a lot of the data in my study also transfers to the home buying process. So what entrepreneurs can do, also people who are in the home buying process can also do, can, you know, kind of employ these same strategies. So one strategy is social networks. So NAREB is a great, people don't know that this resource exists, and that there are realtors that you can rely on and talk to for advice even before you begin the home buying process. Even as simply as, following them on social media, right? You guys have a social media Instagram page, I think a Facebook page as well. Simply following these organizations allows you information, right? It allows you access to information before you even begin the process. And so that information can assist you in the process, right? So tapping into social networks, you really have, I think there's this assumption that you have to be a realtor, a realist in order to be a part of NAREB, right?
Right.
But
right.
you can still be involved in this group and get information even though you're not in the real estate industry, right?
Absolutely.
And so we have to move away from the assumption that you have to be a part of the industry to be a part of these organizations, right? So social networks is key, right? Also, on top of that is getting into, so that ties into the idea that sometimes people get information from social networks that they're already a part of, right? Your church, your college, your friend group, your fraternity, your sorority, right? It's really important to step outside into organizations that you may not know anybody. You may get into a NAREB and not know anyone. But the thing here with that, it's called a weak tie. So it's a weak tie to a social network. Those are really beneficial because it provides you new and insightful information that you would otherwise never have received if you had to just stay connected to your previous social networks, your church and your sorority fraternity. Right. Also, what I found with a lot of entrepreneurs when they're applying for business loans is that they don't go into the bank. We're operating right now in a very virtual world. Yeah. They're actually applying for loans online. And the thing with this, how this assists them, and it's kind of like a sad but really important strategy to be aware of, is that they wouldn't racially identify, they wouldn't check their gender or their sex or their race on these forms. They would opt out of identifying. And so what that does is that when you send, what we found with the business loans, that they would send the information back to the bank, and the bank would assume their race and their gender based on their income, their education, and where they currently live. And so what that did is that for a lot of people, because they have credit worthiness, they're making a nice income, the banks would assume that they were white, even though that they were Black. And so they would again have to send in a picture of their ID or a copy of their ID after the fact. But they've already been, have been accepted or been in the process.
Right. So they've made an assumption
and so
of your ethnicity prior to even getting a copy of your application. Check the box, and once that 1003, for us on our side, the application is a 1003. So once that 1003 is submitted, no one is double working themselves, recalling it to check the right box.
Yeah, and so again, like I mentioned, this is specific. I mean, I'm glad that this is definitely transferable to the homeownership process. But there's participants mentioned that they would of course have to send in a copy of their ID after, but at this point the process has already begun. And so it's like I said, it's a really unfortunate strategy, but it's still a strategy. Applying online, opting out of identifying whether it's they ask you what your gender is or your race is or your sex, however they word it on the form, just opting out of that and letting your income and your creditworthiness lead the way. Also, as me, someone who is an advocate for Black-owned businesses, using Black-owned businesses, there's a lot of Black-owned real estate brokers and agents out there using them, but then the issue is that, which is really unfortunate, but a lot of times, the respondents in my study, they didn't associate Black-owned with legitimate. Like, this isn't a legitimate real estate firm because it's Black-owned, and we have to really move away from that, because there's no correlation between race and legitimacy. Like, just because this is white-owned doesn't make it more legitimate a business than a Black-owned business. And so really relying on Black-owned businesses, because you can avoid, maybe not avoid, but it lessens a lot of the barriers of not being shown as many, homes by a white realtor because you're Black and they don't want to show you, X, Y, and Z homes. Also, if you're a woman choosing, if you identify as a woman, choosing someone who is maybe a woman-owned, Black-owned real estate agent, a real estate firm, as someone who identifies with the barriers that women go through when they are, going in this home buying process as well. And then calling out when you see the coded language, when you see, you know, if your realtor is trying to use the coded language and trying to like subtly tell you about certain areas, call it out. Like to your point, you know, really taking steps to, whether it's suing the bank, whether it's filing a complaint, taking the steps to address the discrimination that you're facing, because again, it's not just you that's experiencing it. If you call it out, hopefully the next person that comes in, the next young Black person that comes in to that bank or to that real estate firm won't have to deal with it, because you've taken the steps to legally address that action.
There is so much that until this conversation with you that I was unaware of. You know, we see it, but to know that there's data that supports it, it's important. And I think that this conversation is so valuable to us as realtors, to us as consumers, to us as entrepreneurs. And I think that we need to have more of these engaging conversations on social media platforms, face-to-face platforms, all of that, just so that we are, at bare minimum, that we are aware.
Absolutely.
And then we would then know how to move thereafter. And I get it. I have heard all the time, you know, people are taking extra precautions when they find out that the business is African American owned, and it becomes, well, let me make sure. And I didn't necessarily grow up that way. For me, when we were younger, everything was at a brick and mortar. You know, there was no working from home. I mean, I'm an exennial, so every true business had a brick and mortar. So if you walked in and there was no furniture in the brick and mortar, then that's when you're like, wait, maybe, you know, maybe they're gonna up and move. Not necessarily basing that just on race, because it's an African American owned business, therefore it's not legitimate. I mean, we work extremely hard to keep the doors open for our consumers. So Ashley, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we call this an end?
So I just kind of really want to reiterate this. None of this is to steer people away from the home buying process, again, because it's like you see your point, it's just awareness. You need to be aware of what's going on out there, so you're not walking out there, you know, blindsided by what data already shows is occurring out there. So just awareness. And so that the first point is just make sure you're informed. If you, as somebody who, if you're someone who's going into the home buying process, make sure that you are informed. And so what this does is that real estate agents, you don't have to rely on coded language or trying to connect in an unethical way to your client. Be a resource. Be a resource for them. To me, if I want to trust a business or trust a real estate agent, I'm going to trust the one that provides information to me long before I begin the buying process. Right. Because they are a trusted resource. Like, resources and information is key. And if you're the one that's providing me with the most information, you're the one that I trust. Not because you're sitting up here like, yeah, there is a barbecue shop and there is a liquor store right around the corner. Not because you're doing that and trying to connect with me. That doesn't build trust to me. What builds trust is the person that is a flow of information, the go-to source. And then also to the people that are in the home buying process, just make sure that you do your work. Make sure that you understand what interest rates should be. Make sure you understand, you know, what all the boxes that you need to check in order to a mortgage loan, so that you know if you're being taken advantage of. So you know that this is where interest rates fall for the home buying process. If you're receiving something that's a red flag, it's a red flag, right? And you only know that it's a red flag because you've done your information, you've done your research to know what your interest rates should be, how percentage of people are accepted when it comes to a mortgage loan. You're aware, but if you don't do your research, you can't be aware, and you can't always expect your real estate agent to do all the research for you. You have to come to the table with some information.
Right. Well, guys, you heard it first here, home ownership from a sociological perspective. Ashley, will you please provide the audience with your company's information?
So again, it's Addicts England Consulting. But if you're just looking for a way to contact me, my website is www.ashleyAtkins.com. So it's Atkins.com. That's just the easiest way to get in contact with me for whether it's your consulting needs or whether you want to know more about my research or if you want to be a participant in my research. I'm currently doing a study with freelancers, and so I'm doing some collecting data on people who are involved in the gig economy, which is a very important issue right now. So you can find everything you need at www.ashley.atkins.com.
Perfect. Thank you again, Ashley. Realtors in the audience, my name is Letitia Grant. I am the National House in the Car Chair for National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And we definitely thank you again for joining us for episode 2 of Super Series Tuesday. Thank you, and you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to join us on Wednesday for Homeownership Changed My Life. Have a good one.
And we are back. Realtors Nation. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wow. So that segment should reinforce the fact that our role as realtors are so critical and relevant in terms of how we must educate ourselves and client base in order to get everyone past
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Super Series Tuesday. My name is Letitia Grant. I am the National Chair of House in the Car. And
she has finished her PhD. So congratulations to Dr. Ashley Atkins. I'm sure she's going to go on and affect a lot of lives with her education and the platform that she's created for herself. And we're just grateful for having her. She did an excellent job of taking us beneath the surface of the discriminatory and negative behaviors, language, and practices that create barriers to Black homeownership. We're so grateful to have had her as our featured guest. Well, audience, we have come to the end of our very first episode of RealtistNation TV, and I am so grateful that you have decided to join us. Please tune in every Tuesday at 6 and 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to watch new and exciting episodes of How Homeownership Changed My Life, Millennial Talk, and Super Series Tuesday, where we will feature powerful guest testimonials and provide you with everything real estate. All right, yeah. Please subscribe, follow, like, share, and engage with us on all of our social media platforms. If you would like to share your comments, questions, and programming ideas, or if you would like to sponsor RealtistNation TV or any of its episodes or segments, please connect with us at RealtistNation TV at NAREB.com. I'm gonna put this up. I gotta show you guys this one. Oh. All right. Thank you again for watching RealtistNation TV, and thank you for supporting our efforts to educate, empower, mobilize, and take this to another level. We also thank you for supporting our mission to increase Black homeownership and promoting home democracy and housing. Stay safe. Have a great night. Ooh, here we go. Yeah, have a good night. We are grateful.